Brilliant.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for coming out on this Saturday afternoon. I'm not sure where you all are at, but Molly and I are in North Carolina, about an hour down the road from each other. And it's gorgeous here today. The sun's out, it's brisk, beautiful fall weather. And it's a perfect time to have a reading to celebrate this new book, Forever 88s, with Molly. Hold the cover up, Molly. It's just it's got a,
Yeah.
that just screams autumn. That's great. Fantastic. So my name is Kevin Watson. I'm the publisher and editor-in-chief of Press 53 in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. This past October, we celebrated our 17th anniversary. We've got 36 authors in, or actually we got more than that. We've got authors in 36 states, I should say. So we were spread out across the United States. We've published a little over 260 books in the 17 years, and we won our 100th award recently, so that's kind of cool. But Molly's here today to read from her new book, Forever 88s, and I met Molly a few years ago through her husband, Adrian, who happens to be one of our poets. I met Adrian at the Underground Theater in Winston-Salem, where he was playing with his good friend, Mr. Mearns, as the Belfast Boys. And I just loved it. And then Adrian came up afterwards and introduced himself. And turns out we have to share the same birthday. We're about 2 years apart. I'm older and wiser. But we reissued The Clockflower from Adrian, and then we did The Hickory Station, and then we did Strange Estate. So we've got 3 books out, and in the interim of all that, I heard Molly read a few of her poems from time to time, and I really liked them. I would refer to Molly as a working class poet. She is a poet for the working class. The kids, like a lot of us who grew up in homes that were maybe just a bit dysfunctional, and money wasn't abundant, and we had to make do with what we had. And great stories come out of that. Of course, you can always look back and fondly at that, but when you're there, sometimes it's not so great. So, Molly, you tell us about Mill Hill a little bit.
Yeah, I entered my first chapbook at Finishing Line Press into a contest where they were publishing, female writers. And they had selected my chapbook to publish. And the editor actually had a stroke, and they contacted me and said, if you design the book and edit it, do all of it, then we'll keep on time here. And I said, well, yeah, I can do that. It might not look great, or, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'd definitely give it a go. And so they published Mill Hill out of Finishing Line Press up in Kentucky. And so that was my first little publication. And my biggest dream was when I was in college, I had written poetry, since I was a child. But my dream in college was that I would have a book. And so that kind of, and that I would be in malaprops. That was like stardust, And so lo and behold, my chapbook, got into malaprops. I did poetry, I did readings, and that's been 10 years ago. So it's been quite a while.
Yeah, what was the inspiration for the title?
I'm from McAdenville, which is Mill Hill, Christmastown, USA. Melanie knows exactly where McAdenville is, because she's from that side of that neck of woods down in Cramerton. So yeah, so I'm from Christmastown, USA, and it tends to appear, being raised in that kind of socialistic way on a mill hill, appears a lot in my writing. I'm so glad that I have that working class background, and especially of the Mill Hill of textiles. Come from a long line of women, South Carolina as well. All the women in my family worked the mills. So I'm the only one that didn't, I'm the only one that went to college and didn't work the mills. So I have to sing their song,
Right, right. And you're in Hickory now
That's right.
at the high school. It's St. Stephen's, is it?
That's right.
St. Stephen's and the Tractor Shed Theater.
Mm-hmm.
How did that all come about?
I had lived in Ireland with Adrian and came back, and we didn't know we were going to stay, but Ram Brandis at Lenore Ryan had brought Adrian over as a writer in residence, and Rand knew that Adrian and I probably shouldn't meet, but we should, that sort of thing. And Rand was our best man at the wedding, and he's here at the reading, but we had to stay on because we got married here. And then, of course, I had to get a job. And I didn't want to go to high school. I was an elementary school teacher or middle school. And I was just headhunted by Deanna Taylor. And I told her, no, I'm not doing high school. And eventually she said, I'll make it a full-time program. And it was hard to resist. And I started that, and that was 17 years ago. I'm still at the Tractor Shed Theater.
Wow. So that was the same time I started Press 53.
Hi.
So in 2005?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow. Boy, a lot of great things happened in 2005. That's wonderful. Yeah. And you have a young son, you and Adrian, who's a brilliant artist. But I love his descriptions of the things that he draws and paints. I've been following him for years, and the boy has a real future ahead of him.
Well, he's a moody preteen. He's 12 now, going on, 17. But we joke in the house because Micah was actually his book blurb for a book called Witches 3, Count With Me, a children's book. The author contacted Micah to ask if he would review her book. And we laughed because Micah's book made it to Target before Forever 88's made it to Target. We were all, wow, look at that. Micah's a published blurbist. Isn't that great?
That's fantastic. That's great.
Yeah.
So, why don't you read some poems for us?
Wonderful.
And then afterwards, I'd like to open things up for some questions. So jot your questions down, folks, or if you want to, throw them in the chat section. And I will keep track of that and see if we can get all your questions answered if you have any, or any comments you might have as well. But I know that when I began reading this collection, when you put it together and got it to me, I started reading through it. I read through it, I think 3 times. And I connected with so much of it myself, coming from a working class background as well. And so that's why I made that link. You said me, wasn't it?
Mm.
Yeah.
Target, actually, back to Target quickly, it says that this poetry book categorized as grief, loss, and death. So,
oh my God.
And it said that suggested reading age is 22. So
I had nothing to do with that.
And I knew you didn't. And I was shocked. I was like, wow, you can go to war, but you can't read my freaking poetry book? Yeah, America.
Well, here's the problem with the publishing industry right now. And the book selling industry right now is that algorithms control everything. The people have been removed from the equation. In fact, I heard on NPR today, they were playing excerpts of prose that had been written by a computer based on what they were told by the author.
Wow.
And these computers are just making up stuff.
Yes.
That, person has cancer, dies, but the computer says, oh, but they recovered and they're living a good life now. So that's the kind of things that are happening that we're trying to that we're battling against, and it's very difficult to present your book properly.
Well, I just
Same.
also saw that Blake Brandis, the son of Beth and Rand, posted that, oh, it's here. AI writing papers for college professors. Now, all they have to do is, throw down the prompt or whatever, and,
Right.
and it actually speaks out human-like. And so they just turn these papers into their professor. So it's here.
Well,
I guess we're not going to
professor,
be ourselves authentically.
professors will find out you can't, there are no shortcuts. You're going to get caught. You're going to sell yourself out. But
Paper and pen. Yeah.
that should be pretty easy to track later on. Right, you can just have them just
All
look
right.
by hand. I don't want anything.
Exactly. Live.
Well, share
Wonderful.
a poem with us.
All right. Well, because the Christmas Town USA, a lot of my poems do have some type of Christmas theme to it. This is called White Christmas. Behind the gutted trailer, I rode my new bike, stopped at the side of strewn trash. I kicked my kickstand into the soft grass. Pot holders, pots and pans, pencils, receipts, telephone bills, and red Christmas garland torn in half. A kitchen drawer upside down. I moved it to sit on it to save my jeans from the wet red mud. I booted something under my feet, lifted it, then sat. A black Santa, painted on plywood with a hole and a bit of string. First thought, he's just covered in coal, soot from the chimney. But then it rang through me like Presbyterian bells. Blacks have their Santa too, and just like their God, he is black, but always painted pale. And I stood wanting to give Christmas and my whiteness back. This one's for my brother, who was absolutely beautifully cruel to us girls. I think that's kind of a working class deal. The boys, the brothers, beat the hell out of the girls for fun. It's all for fun. And we barely withstood it, but all with a laugh. This is called Winded. Shoe skating on top of the ice-covered school storage shack, swathed in grandmother's early Christmas presents. Red fancy snowsuits with the silver racing stripes. My brother and I played a game of spin against my will. I begged and cried and shouted that I would tell. He grabbed me by the belt and pulled me round and round. I fear laughed as my shoes slid over the ice. Then it happened, slick as sleet. The belt snapped like a frozen twig, over the edge, legs flying, searching for a landing, then smack, the kiss of the frozen ground. I felt for the first time my breath knocked clear out of me, like my soul leaving my body. The clean, white ghost unzipping my red snowsuit and floating out. And him up there laughing down, then bolting, unable to breathe any words, all still ice in my mouth, to tell him to stop and stay, to come back. Tired Child. This is after a beautiful Irish painting by Louis Le Brocq. Pinwheel spins as his hot breath blows. I, like a baby, can do nothing but gasp. Merry-go-round turns as his hard arm throws. I, just a child, can do nothing but grasp. I cannot breathe. He will not stop. You laugh, you laugh. And we lived behind a church in McAdenville. So this was one of the very few times that we actually went inside. We loved to play on the outside of the church, but this is why we didn't go in. This is called Free Will. We went because our friends did. We placed and glued our colored macaroni to make the shape of Jesus's face, just like the rest of them. We carefully tied our clothes and cloth with the given ribbon. We loved the Old Testament stories and sang the hymns just like the rest of them, but louder and prouder and with our whole souls. Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. We went because our friends did, and when the whole congregation met in the main hall to feed, we waited last in line with our paper plates for a few crumbs, potato chips, brownies, chocolate cupcakes. Like sheep, we sat in the back, eyes downcast. During the Lord's Prayer, I didn't shut my eyes. I saw the sisters staring at us. When the prayer was over, and in that last quiet moment, all heard a sister say, "Those girls only come for the food." And I stood, took my little sister by the hand, and led her through the hall, walked out the front doors, and all the way home. Little ones to him belong. They are weak, but he is strong. So yeah, I was called Morbid Molly in high school. And I was in a writers group. And one of my teachers really encouraged my writing. And she was just amazing. But she's like, don't let them call you Morbid Molly just because you write truth and life. You're not too young to know what hate is. You're not too young to know what love is not. And she really encouraged me. So I adopted that, Morbid Molly. So I guess Target says grief, death, and loss. Okay. Well, that's part of Christmas too, Um, this one from the South Carolina Mill Hills. My grandmother's father was a deputy for the Mill Hill, and he was known all around town. And he would take a June bug and tie it to his tongue, and the June bug would fly out on a string from his tongue. I mean, wild, but you do what you got to do to entertain the kids. This one's called Fuller's Flying Circus. This is for Ansel, Eula, Molly Ruth, and Mary Lou. She said he would tie a bit of string around a June bug and fly it like a careworn kite, around in circles and zigzags for the Mill Hill kids, shouting, singing, buzzing, parading their catch in a flea circus attempt to humiliate and cheer the man-controlled creepy crawly. Finally, it would break the line and fly free-willed higher than tiptoes and fingertips. Fuller would then chase and catch another with his Pied Piper antics. The children would crowd and audition sticky legs and tiny wings for their next hair-raising, death-defying, amazing flying finale tied to his tongue. That is wild that you would tie a June bug with a string and fly it. I love it. So this is Christmastown, USA. And McAdenville used to have, I'm not sure, things are changing. There are a lot of angry people about the trees being removed from the lake and some of the traditions not being held. And I was mad when they started building condos. I'm well there. But now people are really angry, and there's lots of controversy online. And some people are like, excuse me, this is free. Shut up. We live here. We're paying to decorate. What are you talking about? And others, McAdenville people, are like, put McAdenville back, So it's fun to watch. I've only taken Micah and Adrian once because the grief, my ghosts are all there. So if I do want to examine that, I have to be in the right mood to go, because it's not all just cheery and lights for me. This is called Christmastown, USA. Under these lights, magic can happen. Even Satan can turn into Santa. His beard's not a tangled forest of shadow. His boots not kicking your ribs. His belt with golden buckle not marking your body. His suit, not a uniform marching to the boilers. His ho, 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 not a yelling curse. Under these lights, 450,000 red, white, and green flame. There's a glimmer of a smile, some warmth. Pawn shop presents are not ticking time bombs. Dogs are not hiding under the couch. Singing is not told to shut up. We are not made to eat in the kitchen alone. Flinching is nowhere to be found. But the moon hangs over us and the blinking lights fade. Fear enters noisily caroling that Christmas comes only once a year. Was that a husband that I felt behind me there? He's laughing. This is Hereafter, after Langston Hughes. It's had shouting in it, and slapping and yanking hair and places you can't hide your fear. You turned your cheek and finally sat down on the steps and smoked deeper, eyes fixed on what could have been. No crystal stare here, despair, and lucky you are now elsewhere. My brother passed away when he was 36. He overdosed, and that poem was for him because I felt like there was a mercy for him passing too soon. My mom passed when she was 56. Matter of fact, I only have really one family member left. So yeah, the holidays are awfully merry, but I make merry for the boys, you know. My mom was a legend in the bars. Everybody knew Debbie, and this is why. This is called Jukebox Gold. Bar hopping legend. You could shove a cue ball into your mouth and spit it into the side pocket without a shadow of a doubt. A bar box hustle you pretended suited you just fine. But I know there was a woman trapped inside, shaking the bars, who would have much rathered a conversation about the cosmos, a shake, rattle, and roll in a jukebox gold, much rathered a song from the soul. Not the country twang of where you landed, not the love the one you're with, but a holy union where Jesus dwelt, and not a drunk man, hands fiddling your thighs. Quiet eyes, bad break. Your side pocket scratch left you losing out as the jukebox honky tonked on and on, hooked, then walking the floor. Mrs. Liftings. His bed was pristine clean. He was neatly tucked in. The lilies the daughter brought in were set by the off TV. Enough of this world, the rattle of reality. She spoke to him like you would a child, that soothing, loving lilt. You have visitors. He, heavy with cancer and meds, came to. He spoke in slow motion. He half smiled. The same way my brother did when he was earthbound, but his deathbed was the front seat of his home, head on steering wheel, overdosing himself out of this stifling town. Aunt Molly's was her own bed, her own secret blood pulled and seeped into the covers, but her face, a porcelain doll, fixed and ready for the rapture. My mother's, the hospital bed. My sister dry washed her hair, and I cleaned her feet. I sang, and she touched my lips. The massive stroke of the clock, the constant TV company, she slipped away, morphine mute. Now, when the phone rings, I think it is grief calling, telling of another lifting. It's been a while that I've been on Zoom or in Google Meet. I did that for for extended time, the school actually let me keep teaching virtually. And then soon I found out I had breast cancer. And so it was really cool to teach my kids virtually. Adrian still Zooms his students. But I don't know. I think that this is a bit more nerve-wracking than being live, because I know you're there somewhere in the little box, and I just want to be so present with you. It's a little bit more difficult here, but it's there. I'm honored that people from all over can gather, though. So it's like a mixed blessing for me, I think. This is called Time to Time. I know how fast time goes. I watch you grow and conjure the others from their graves who time called too soon. In mosaic memory, piecing together their hands, smiles, words, eyes, hugs, moments, monumental mementos, each a tessera that builds for the time being landscapes that I make into dreamscapes. Tugging you in at night, we always say, where are we going to meet? Lucid scenes to deny our sleep separation, a field of daisies, a floating cloud, back in Ireland by the Shimna, playing with Ray, all our happy places. And you keep growing, and I keep withering. In good time, I hope to see them again, pieced back together in all their glory. And these words bring you, my son, the same solace. DYB, being a theater teacher and always loving the stage, I had teachers that encouraged me to perform. I was very outgoing, but I realized quite quickly that my child can't be something he's not. This poem is called DYB for Ellen Brown. My mother grabbed my coveted Christmas present, the Panasonic shoebox portable cassette recorder. As soon as she heard our favorite tune blast over the radio waves, she'd mostly hit the red record button just in time for the first verse. She'd push play, then pause until the lyrics were written down, ready us for the McAdenville Elementary talent show. She planned out our dance moves on the yellow kitchen linoleum floor. I practiced till I got it all right. Don't it make my brown eyes blue? Upside down, best of my love, you're in my heart. Years of songs under my belt. A teacher saw my love of the stage and cast me in my first show, a ringmaster. The makings of my love of suspending disbelief. My mother is now long gone. I pull her close to me as I fret for my boy tonight. He is backstage. It is his first time in a wee skit, and the gymatorium is packed. Through our rehearsal times at Cub Scouts, at school, at Ivy's house, he tried to quit. He even feigned sickness the day of. His dad, on the walk home from school after his teacher mentioned Micah was complaining of a headache, fever, spoke quietly and kindly and reminded him that a gentleman finishes what he starts and he doesn't let his team down. And there he is, the horrible before feeling. His wee worried eyes, brow bent in half, trying to distract himself and the others waiting. I gave him titchy good luck, like I do all my teenage actors, more to comfort myself, and walked away back to my seat, nestled between Dad and cheering friend. Curtains open on Oakwood's Got Talent, and nervously the troupe do their Cub Scout skit. Afterwards, on our walk to the car, he confessed that he nearly ran off stage. He said he wanted to run away and never stop running. Where I relish the spotlight, he does not. His shyness, strange to me. I was so proud he was able to fight stage fright, to stay, to see it through, to finish what he started, to slay his monster fear list of what ifs. What if I mess up? What if the audience leaves? What if I vomit? What if my friends mess up? What if people make fun of us? I was proud. He was proud. The prize of praise, not being number one, not being the best, but DYB, do your best, whatever that best is at the moment. Not to give up when you're up front, on the front line. Stand up, even when all eyes are on you. DYB, DYB, DYB. And Adrian had to go pick up Micah, and Micah was invited to one of the first, he's in middle school now, so it's harder to be invited to things, but he went to pick him up. He was invited to hang out with a wee friend. So this is for Adrian. It's called Blazed. I took him to play pinball to grant you time to browse books, your favorite pastime, when suddenly I sunk into sorrow with the thought of a tomorrow where I alone would landmark our memories. Breathless, I was led back to the front seat of my car when I held my breath and slipped my hand into your blazer to ask your heart to beat with my heart. And we sat wordless, blazed with the car aflamed. I tend not to write a lot of poems for Adrian and Micah. It's really, I find myself writing mostly about my family that have passed, or maybe my trauma or grief. My grandparents were the biggest influence for me. If it weren't for them, I wouldn't be alive. They found me right at that time where I was trying to exit. And they gave me their bed. Actually, my grandmother slept on the couch to give me her bedroom. She lived in a trailer. And so I tend to write a lot about the beautiful love of grandparents. But writing about Adrian and Micah, I find to be a bit more difficult. I think because they're still with me. Maybe so. This is Redbird, the first Christmas Eve without her. 1. The first gift to his father was a red bird for his desk. At 7, he knew the bird would watch over him from the branch of his bookshelf, to fly his pen over the sky of page, to memorialize moments. 2. We fed the red birds 12 months of the year, most striking their fire feathers on the white snow, seed easy to find, a helpful handful. She and I, feeders of the sun and her daughter. 3. Our cardinal loss left us knowing we have become the front line, as you often remind me. The redbird's song sent to cheer us up or cheer us on. Seeing one in Southern Tale is to receive messages from loved ones who went first. We are what's left. The redbird sings and hinges my heart to yours. Singer for Catherine Stripling Beyer. Precision stitches, her singer hummed the thread zigzagging reversible wraparound skirts and costumes for my school plays. Seemed so foreign to me when she showed me how to wind the bobbin, afraid I would break something. The surgeon's light of the machine made it seem so final. Too afraid of the treadle to trust my own attempts, but by hand I helped her thread the eye and tie knots and push pins into the tomato fashion pincushion. Housewifing seemed intimidating. Seamstress, stressful. She was a pro, but as she put it, had it to do. Her patterns forever stitched in me. Now her machine sits dusty, faintly singing its rhythm of creation. And I am so happy that you all could come in and tune in. And for Kevin, you have made a little girl's dream come true. And it really does go back to that, where I would write, being in that working environment, living in trailers and Mill Hill houses, and before the internet and iPads, I had a pen that was cheap enough and paper. And I would write just anything that I could see or think or feel. And even in high school, I started, writing out a collection of poetry. And in college, then I was in literary magazines and such. And so here I am at 51, and the little girl is just so grateful for you, Kevin, for believing in me and my work, and for you guys, the most precious gift that you could give me is your time, and you're here, and I'm so happy. The title is a bit tricky because sadly 88 has some negative connotation to it as well. It's used as hate speech. It's meant to mean Hail Hitler, because 8 letters and 8 letters, and white supremacists use it. And Kevin and I talked a lot about, I like the numbers. I like the way 2 8s look. And I was pissed off, to be honest, that I couldn't use that without being some freaking dog whistle. And so the frontispiece of the book kind of deals with that, like trying to own back the numbers, because I thought I was going to be brave enough to use the numbers and just say, to hell with it. These are my numbers, not yours. But with much deliberation, Kevin actually gave me what was from the last poem about my grandfather, the forever of the 88s. And I just thought it looked a lot, it looked prettier, I think, on the page, written out in words. And then I didn't even have to look at the numbers and what they possibly meant to someone else. So this is kind of, it's not the title poem, but the title comes from this poem. My grandfather had sundowner's dementia. He was a truck driver. And the only way that I felt like I could communicate with him was to play. I'm a drama teacher. I never have given up playing. I'm the eternal Peter Pan, just keep playing. And so I played with my grandfather. I would pretend I was on a CB with him. And when he would come into range, when I was a little girl, we would talk a lot on the CB. And so this poem kind of examines those last moments with him. And it's called Breaker Diesel Smoke. A convoy of memories line up down the corridor, revving up their engines for that last long haul, the magic mile. Bet you'd be happy to know you won't have to ride in a bone box. You've already been bedded, been horizontal for a while. I wait for the 10-4. Seems like the landline always sounds the sorry signal. Come back. Come on. I put my face to yours. I say hello. Hello? Can you hear me? Got a copy? Can you see me? Got your ears on? Come on, Granddaddy. When I ask, they only reply with how many candles you've got burning. 89. He's declining, nervous system shutting down, making him jerk, heavily medicated, eyes and we gone on the by, head in the horizon. Checking my eyelids for pinholes, I stand in the threshold and rush back each time I see his mouth move. Silent, ratchet jaw, distant drone. What's your 20? Only his eyes shift when I say his other half's name, Mary Lou. Dark time, his black Velcro shoes opened and sitting on the windowsill ready to go. Ground clouds, follow the stripes, home. Forever 88s, out, pinky. So 88s really means forever love. Hugs and kisses. And it's one of the oldest ways to say, it's from telegraph. Telegraph, the numbers 88 meant, I love you with the utmost love. And so it pisses me off that the 88s is taken over for a hate symbol because it actually means love, not the opposite. And you would sign off on the CB. You could say 73s if you didn't know somebody. That's like with kind regards, but 88 is what you'd say, maybe to a lover or a family member. You'd be like 88's out, and out is off by. And then Pinky was my name because I was a little girl. That was my handle, Pinky. So, but thank you so much, Kevin, for having me and organizing this Zoom meet. I'm so honored to be here with everyone.
Well, thank you for trusting me with your collection of poems. It really, the 3 reads I gave, and I just kept discovering things as I went through. And what was your grandfather's handle?
He was Diesel Smoke. So the title is Breaker, because that's how you call someone on the beat. You know, because Kevin, you did CB, didn't you?
Yeah, back in the 70s.
Yeah.
It was big. When who's the guy who did the song Red Something, had a trucker song?
Oh yeah, Rubber Ducky.
Country radio, and I've got a Convoy, and they had the Convoy movies with Burt Reynolds and
Smokey and the Bandit.
Yeah.
I was a big fan.
Yeah, Jerry Reed.
Yes.
So it's like everybody had a CB in their car, and my was Honky Tonk Stardust Cowboy. I stole that from Jonathan Edwards. That was the title of one of his songs, and I just loved it.
Oh my goodness, that's brilliant.
But then they just started calling me Cowboy because, they break everything down to the bare minimum.
The bare minimum. It was huge. All the, my grandmother would be on the CB. It was basically an old way to, like, Facebook, it's like CB talk was Facebook time, I have my granddaddy's CB from his truck.
Oh, fantastic.
It's huge. It's huge
Really?
and heavy. Yeah, it's ancient with all of his trucking logs. So it's really cool because all of his little time in and time out. He did citrus, he did fruit from Florida and trucked mostly up to New York, but he worked for Ryder. Yeah.
How about that?
But he would sit in his bed, Kevin, and he would sit up and he'd reach for his cigarettes. He's 89. He had to stop smoking he was in the middle of his life, but he had stopped smoking, but he would be like, "Where's my cigarettes?" And he'd be like, breaker, breaker. And he'd just start talking. And so that's how I played. We sat and talked to each other. And there are times that he knew me because with sundowners, you can, sometimes you can be present with them and sometimes you're not. And so there were times he knew who I was, and other times I was the girl on the CB talking to him, or sometimes I would be the waitress. I would pretend I was a waitress. Now my working class family didn't like that. They thought I was wacko. They're like, "Stop, that's awful. Don't do that to him." And I said, "You don't get to dictate the time I spend with my granddaddy." So.
No, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I learned while reading your poems too, that your grandmother was a professional wrestler.
She was.
Tell us about that. That is cool.
Well, she started wrestling, and it was the hotbed of Charlotte was a hotbed for wrestling. And everybody knows that. Ric Flair, the glory days, and they were looking for women, basically glorified pinups, let's be honest, And Kevin, when my grandmother passed, she was my person. Like, I wear this little red cardinal, like the red bird. She is my cardinal loss, And when she died, someone had contacted me through the Gastonia Gazette, and they said, "Are you Molly Rice?" I said, "Yes." "Why?" And they said, "We read your obituary for your grandmother, and I was wondering if you'd be interested in doing an article. She sounds like a fascinating woman." And I said, "Oh, she would love that. Of course I will." And while I was looking for the article, I couldn't find it because it wasn't ready yet. So I thought, isn't it interesting how my grandparents and my mother and my brother don't exist online? Like, the internet doesn't know them. And so I was thinking of that, carbon footprint. And so I typed her full name into images, and lo and behold, I pulled up a freaking pinup photo of her. And I was like, "Oh, that's my grandmother. What the hell? And so I did all sorts of research and I found that it was from a wrestling magazine, and some guy in Wales had posted it. And so I contacted him. I said, that's my grandmother. Can I have the magazine? He said, no, you can't have the magazine. I collect these old ring wrestling magazines. I collect them, and no, this is a very
Wow.
special edition because it has the girl grapplers. And I'm not giving this one up. And it's really cool that I met the granddaughter of a girl grappler. And I was like, okay. But I went on Etsy and found it. Not Etsy, sorry. The
eBay?
other website. Yeah, eBay, and found it for $8.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. So she wrestled for a bit, and then her son was in a horrific car accident where he became a paraplegic on the spot. And so she stopped wrestling to tend his injury. But she enjoyed it. She would
Great
get out in
story.
the yard in the trailer park. One time the cops were called on her because she was doing, some figure eights on her son and slamming him on the ground. And one of the neighbors called the police, and she had to tell the police, no, I swear we're just practicing wrestling moves, honey. I ain't kicking my kid's ass. Listen, we are just wrestling. We wrestling. And she goes, I have to show you my wrestling thing. You don't believe me, do you? He's like, no, I kind of do believe you. Keep wrestling. Don't hurt them, though.
That's beautiful.
Right.
That's beautiful. Well, let's open it up for some questions. Does anyone here have anything they'd like to ask Molly about her interesting past or present or future?
The future gets kind of harder to talk about,
That's true. That's true. If you have a question, just unmute yourself and throw it out there.
Or if you just want to say, hey.
Yep, you want to do that too? It's fine. We're winding down. That was a great reading, Molly. Very, very nice.
Thanks, Kevin. I do have some upcoming readings in
Oh, tell us
person.
about that.
Yeah, Huntersville, at the Waterbean Coffee. Leslie does an amazing job with that series. So she's invited me down. I think that's December 28th, if you get tired of Christmasing and you want to come down. And then I am on Wordplay in Asheville. And then I read at Poetrio in Malaprops. I'm trying to get a reading in Greenville, South Carolina, just for kicks. I'd love to go down. I think I got a little connection at a bookstore there through Glennis Redmond, who blurbed the back of my book, and read, and take my grandparents' ashes down, and go to the Mill Hills down there and do a reading there. But yeah, and then I have one, Kevin, at Flyleaf in Raleigh. I think that's February. So it's all kind of happening in December. I'll put it up on my, I put a little flyer up on my Facebook if you do that sort of thing. If not, just contact me if you want to know more.
Yeah, thankfully, places are starting to open back up for in-person readings. There's nothing, like you mentioned, there's a disconnect when you're doing a Zoom thing. Everybody's there, but you want to feel them, you want to see them, you want to reach out and touch them and hear them, so it's different.
Yeah.
Asks, how did the pandemic affect your writing?
I think I was so overwhelmed with keeping my child involved in schoolwork, because everything became a submit, nothing creative. And so being online for Micah really took most of my time. It was easy for me to teach my students, I felt. And Adrian, like I said, he still Zooms his students. We become quite savvy teachers online. I'm glad I got that opportunity. I'm better technology-wise, definitely. But as far as my own writing, I even have a poem about it. I tend to push my writing to the back burner as a mother and a teacher and a wife. But I did write one poem about the pandemic. I was baking bread with everybody else, or roller skating out in the, I actually was living life even more so, because we kind of are we kind of keep to ourselves anyway. We're proper COVID dodgers. We're just now starting to venture out. Adrian had a reading down in Athens, and he's like, do we mask? Do we not mask? What are we doing here? You know, and it became like quite stressful. But the pandemic didn't really give me time to write like I wished it would. I just didn't kind of focus on that. I was so blindsided by what is happening in the world. But I feel like that'll show up later on. My poetry is kind of on a delay. Takes some time and some processing to get to it. But what a beautiful question.
Yeah.
Jill,
I've got
thank
another one
you.
here from Rosalind. Do you see any parallels in the mill workers' culture in Northern Ireland in your family's experience?
You know, I just did my ancestry, and I'm actually more Scottish than Adrian is, which is funny. And I'm
Wow.
also African. So,
Hmm.
but when I went and lived in Northern Ireland, you know, again, the Mill Hills are defunct, you know, there as well, not just here. But I do see a lot of parallel within culture. Um, I didn't get to experience a lot of the mill workers back then too. I didn't know that I'd be focusing some of my writing on the Mill Hill, because I was back in America when I wrote Mill Hill. But definitely Northern Ireland and the South. I mean, they're the original rednecks, aren't they? You know, the Ulster Scots, they're to blame for all our problems, really. I mean, that's what I think anyway. And it's so
Yeah.
cool that Adrian can't hear this because he'd probably agree, you know. A lot of things that are going on now, you know, are happening there in Northern Ireland too. Same culture. Sadly, some of that same hate culture. I was in
Yeah.
the bathtub once in Northern Ireland, and I was shocked to hear Dixie play from an ice cream truck.
Oh my
I
gosh.
was like, am I dreaming this? But I hear do 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 do. I'm like,
Wow.
what? Oh wow, okay. Oh
That's
look,
crazy.
oh look, they're flying a rebel flag at the bonfire. Cool. Like, so I did see a lot of culture parallels, you know. But
That's not surprising when you think about the Appalachians were heavy, heavy, heavy with the Irish, the Welsh, Scottish. I met Robert Morgan years ago. My mom's maiden name was Morgan. And I said, you know, we might be related. Because, you know, my mom was a Morgan. And he said, well, Morgan is the second most common name in Wales. He said the Morgans were so common at one time in the eastern or the western part of the state that there was a huge, and you can find this, I Googled it, there was a huge section of land that covered a little bit of North Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, maybe even Kentucky, that was known as the Morgan District.
ah,
And he said there were so many Morgans that that's what it was known as, and they were all merchants and moonshiners. So yeah, there was a lot of influence from there. So the Welsh, the Scottish, the Irish, yeah,
the original rednecks.
yep, pretty much. Yeah, explains a lot. Well, let's see. There's one more question from Natalie. How is your work in theater in conversation with your work in poetry?
Well, I do try to inspire and engage kids in poetry, my own, because I want to show them I'm proud of being a published author. And I think that it's important that kids see what that means and see a physical book and watch me read something from my life to them, to be transparent, to share with them art. Um, and I also then, you know, other poets I share, we do the Poetry Out Loud contest, where they learn a poem by heart and recite it. And they adore that. And we do spoken word too, because they tend to really enjoy spoken word. But as far as like my own work in theater in conversation with my poetry, I want to write more about my experience in the classroom, but I do find that difficult. I find that I am very hard on myself. I find it to be a bit forced because I want to write about it. I kind of like feel that I'm being twee. you know. Um, there are a lot of particular students that, my whole life has been given to children, to students, and I collect so many. I see it like this time capsule of people. And so, like with Nikki Witt, who's one of my beloved alumni, I hold this kind of time of Nikki when she was in high school. And so a lot of my vision of who she is now as a grown woman is still very much of who she once was. I think parents do that too with their own children, but because you don't really necessarily grow with those people, you hold them kind of like these little figurines within this time capsule. And so I know I could write poetry about a lot of people and what they were and what they mean to me. But I do find that to be quite difficult. Maybe because it's, I don't know how to put it, but there is definitely a block there within they are quite separate. It's kind of like those people that don't like food touching.
Mm.
I would like for it to blend more. I feel like maybe in the future I can do that. I feel like also I have to get the shadow of my father out of my work. And so I don't feel like I'm quite there yet. And the grief of losing place is kind of what's on my mind currently, of losing your footing in a household within the place of your who you once were, it going away, as well as the people, like the Mill Hill, like the trailer park, and how you leave bits and pieces of yourself there. So I think Tractor Shed will be that too. It'll be a place. It's a beautiful question.
Yeah, well, thank you, Molly. I've enjoyed this. This is wonderful. We need to do it again sometime. Maybe pair you up with a couple more of our poets and have a roundabout conversation between the three of you. So anyway, thank you all for coming out today. I really appreciate it. I hope everyone has a wonderful, warm, and filling in every way holiday season. And Molly, again, thank you for trusting me with your words. And I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation.
Wonderful. And thank you all. I know I haven't seen some of you in ages, but boy, do you mean so much to me. One day, maybe our paths will cross physically. I would love that day. But until then, I hold you each. I love looking at all your little faces. I hold you each so deep in my heart and my memory, and my well wishes to you all, and love and peace to you during the holidays. And I hope you stay well if you can.